Update now on a push to change concealed carry laws in North Carolina. The House just passed a Senate bill to allow almost any adult to carry a concealed gun without a permit. Supporters of the bill say concealed carry permits are unconstitutional and infringe on people's rights. Opponents say gun violence has surged in other states that did away with concealed carry permits. The new Hanover County Representative Ted Davis is one of two Republicans joining Democrats in voting against the bill. The bill will likely be vetoed by Democratic Governor Josh Stein. That would require all Republicans and one Democrat to support the bill in order to override the veto.